Tonight on Huckabee, the president urging young people to help plug Obamacare.
So I'm going to need you all to spread the word about how the Affordable Care Act really works.
But a new poll shows most millennials don't plan on signing up. Tonight, why America's youth is tuning the president out. And the Obamacare website, a bullseye for hackers.
And it doesn't appear that any security was built into the site itself at all.
The serious privacy risks that come with signing up for health care. Plus, students who used to get straight A's now struggling in class. Why Common Core is not making the grade. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Mike Huckabee.
Thank you very much. We've got a great Christmas time audience here. Let me just say welcome to Huckabee from the Fox News studios in New York City. Okay, I'm going to give you a sampling of some things that people have posted on my Facebook page lately. I hear you support Common Core education standards. I'll never watch your show again. Another said, if you support Common Core, you've lost my trust. Or here's another one. You need to learn the truth about Common Core. Well, I guess the person who said that he'd never watch my show again isn't going to hear this, and, well, that's too bad. I want to cut right to the chase. I don't support what Common Core has become in many states or school districts. Look, I'm dead set against the federal government creating a uniform curriculum for any subject. I oppose the collection of personal data on students that would identify them and then track them, and certainly any effort to give that personal information to the federal government. I am steadfast in my belief that parents should ultimately decide the best venue for their children's education, whether it's public schools, private schools, religious schools, or home schools. I believe education is a local or state function, not a federal one. Sadly, the very label Common Core has come to be associated with things that I detest, like agenda-driven curriculum that indoctrinates instead of educates. Now, I'm convinced that the term Common Core needs to disappear from the lexicon of education policy. It's a toxic term because it's come to mean things that most of us can't stomach, like top-down federal intrusion into the local schools where you live. But Common Core, as it was designed, had nothing to do with the federal government. It was conceived and controlled by elected governors and state school chiefs to keep federal hands from interfering. And it only dealt with two subjects, math and English. And in those two subjects, established only state-initiated standards in those subjects and intentionally didn't write or even suggest curriculum. It set voluntary goals. They were controlled by the local school boards. Unfortunately, the locally controlled and very simple creation of standards in math and English, created so that students would be measured by comparable standards regardless of geography, well, that's been hijacked by those who took the label Common Core and applied it to curriculum, subjects other than math and English, and even unrelated things such as personal data collection. As a result, Common Core as a brand is dead, and hopefully the perversions of it will die as well. Now, what I hope doesn't die is setting higher standards for students, keeping score to see just how well they're doing, and then having accountability for the results. Education bureaucrats have long fought against honest assessments and sometimes fought against accountability, often being satisfied with underperforming students who were far behind their peers in other states or other countries. The Wall Street Journal reported just this week that schools in the U.S. were performing below those in Vietnam, Lithuania, Russia, and Hungary, that our 15-year-olds haven't seen improvement in over a decade compared to other nations. Now, for those who think that I embrace Common Core, I don't embrace or even want to tolerate what it's come to mean in too many locations. Yes, it's been hijacked, and I don't support the hijackers or the destination, but I don't blame the airplane for getting hijacked. I just hope that we aren't willing to accept mediocrity as a standard. Let's kill the name Common Core and all the nonsense that's been tacked onto it. But let's insist that if we continue to spend the most money in education, that we demand that the end result is achievement. See, I think every governor should take the wheel and then steer his or her state to adopt strict and rigorous standards. I'd suggest do what Governor Terry Branstad did in Iowa. Recraft it into a state-specific initiative. Keep it simple. Name it whatever you want to. Don't let anyone corrupt the goals by adding things that aren't part of the goals. Common Core is dead, but common sense should not be. That's my view. I want to introduce you to three people from different parts of the country who are dealing with education issues where they live. Julie Craig's daughter, Amy, is in the 7th grade in Oregon. Amy always enjoyed math and excelled in the subject, but this year she went from getting an A to a D. Julie is one of 9 parents in Amy's school to pull their kids out of math class so she can teach them at home. Carol Burris is the principal at Southside High School in New York. She was a big proponent of Common Core, but has changed her view since its implementation in her district. And Ethan Young is a senior and student body president at Farragut High School in Tennessee. He recently made his case against Common Core at a local school board meeting.
The task of teaching is never quantifiable. If everything I learned in high school is a measurable objective, I haven't learned anything. Creativity, appreciation, inquisitiveness, these are impossible to scale, but they're the purpose of education. Why our teachers teach, why I choose to learn. And today we find ourselves in a nation that produces workers. Everything is career and college preparation. Somewhere our founding fathers are turning in their graves, pleading, screaming, and trying to say to us that we teach to free minds. We teach to inspire. We teach to equip. The careers will come naturally.
Well, that was Ethan. Ethan, Julie, Carol, welcome to all of you. Great to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
You know, Ethan, that was a powerful speech. And I, first of all, appreciate the, I thought, incredible articulation of what ought to be the passion of every person to learn.
Thank you.
But should there be standards? Should there be some goal so that we know how well students are doing?
Right. Well, absolutely. I mean, you have to have standards. You can't just throw kids into school and hope that they're going to figure out whatever. You have to have some kind of guideline. The problem is when we try to make standards 100% of what happens in a classroom, because inevitably that turns into test prep.
Yeah.
And so education is reduced to something that's really not engaging to students, not beneficial to students. And while our test scores may go up with such an education, it doesn't really, it's not indicative of what we need to have happen in education, which is to free people's minds.
And I think everybody would agree that the basic purpose of school is to learn how to learn, not just to learn certain things, but to learn how to learn so that that could be applied to anything. Obviously, the big challenge is then how do you measure whether or not the students are learning. If I were teaching you one-on-one, that's easy.
Right.
But if you're in a class of 25 kids, how are we going to do that? So I guess what I'm looking for is, what are some suggestions from a student's point of view that would help you to say, I know I've hit the mark, but I've still been able to maintain some freedom in learning?
Right. Well, I think, you know, and specifically with Common Core, the reason that it doesn't really help students, I guess, is that it doesn't leave a lot of room for teachers to individualize a classroom setting to a student. So what would be helpful for me is to be able to have a teacher who can say, okay, you know, we have to hit this objective today, but I'm also going to have class time that's allotted for me to do what I think my students need. Maybe we took a huge exam yesterday and we just can't hit all these standards today because my students are overloaded. Then we need to have that time. You know, and so there's flexibility that needs to be added, and that's what helps students because you're equipping teachers to help students.
Carol, as an educator, I know there's a frustration. My sister's a teacher, has been for 37 years. She hates when she feels that she's being made to teach to a test. So I want to talk about, how does Common Core inhibit that? Or do you think it is, as I think, sort of a perversion of the original goal of Common Core, which didn't tell schools or teachers how to get there? It just said, here's the goal. How you get there is up to you.
Right. I think what happened was the idea of having standards is important. But the Common Core standards were written in a very different way. They were not written by educators. And they were very, very quickly put in place. And they were done with a backward design, so that they took a look at what would you like kids to be able to do in the senior year of high school and then walk it backwards. Now the problem is, kids don't grow backwards, they grow forward. So you have unusual standards, like for example in kindergarten, kids have to be able to count from 1 to 100 by ones and tens. There'll be some kids who can do it in kindergarten, but if you look at the literature on development, a lot of 4- and 5-year-olds can't do that yet. So that's put a tremendous amount of pressure on teachers to teach the test. And then when you start to evaluate teachers by the test, and they're in fear of losing their jobs if their kids don't perform, it becomes a real lethal mix. And it's not healthy.
Let me ask you to stay put and our audience to stay put, because we're going to talk more with these folks about Common Core when we return.
I'd like to hear from you. Go to my website, MikeHuckabee.com. Tell me what you think on the Leave Feedback section, or sign up for my Facebook page and follow me on Twitter. You can find a link to that and more at MikeHuckabee.com.